It is such a great honor to introduce Professor Michael Sherraden tonight. Professor Sherraden is the George Warren Brown Distinguished Professor and founder and director of the Center for Social Development at the Brown School at Washington University in St. Louis. Professor Sherraden has received widespread recognition for testing innovations and impacts on public policy. He has advised heads of state and policy leaders in the United States and in many other countries. In 2010, Time magazine named him among the 100 most influential people in the world. Now that I have gotten the formal academic introduction out of the way, let me turn to the more personal. It is truly a joy to introduce my mentor tonight. I have known Michael for 17 years. 7 of those years, I worked for him, and 5 of those 7 years, I was his doctoral student. After I graduated, I was a co-PI with Michael for a 4-country research project called Youth Save. When I was a student, Michael not only provided me opportunities, but he guided me through some of the most challenging times in my life. Working for Michael was a period in my career when I grew in leaps and bounds. I was ushered before private donors to present my work. I was principal investigator of a research project that was oceans away. I adapted most of the work of Center for Social Development to the African context, and all that time, Michael believed in me and trusted that I could problem solve and deliver a successful project at the end of it all. To demonstrate how much Michael trusted me with running Assets Africa, which is the name of the project I was principal investigator for in Uganda, whenever I walked into his office, to give him an update of the project, Michael would say to me, "Gina, tell me the big picture. You can deal with the details. Tell me dollars, not cents." And this was the tradition with him. I would give him the big picture, and he would provide feedback on the broader lens, and I managed the projects independently. Over the years, I grew in my independence as a development practitioner and as a researcher under his wings. I traveled to so many countries to negotiate MOUs and project designs and to present CSD's work. As I mentioned, Michael has also guided me through some of the most challenging times in my life. One in particular comes to mind. Just before I defended my dissertation, at this point, I had collected the baseline data and the follow-up data for the project in Uganda, ran the analysis, I'd written the first draft, the second draft, and I was ready to defend. Then my dad, who was on his way to the United States to attend my graduation, passed away unexpectedly in Zambia. I was devastated, and I did not want anything to do with the dissertation. You see, my dad was my cheerleader, and he was so excited about my graduation. Michael understood this because, being the mentor that he is, he took time to know my family, and he knew the special relationship I had with my dad. Michael was very patient with me and slowly guided me back to work on my dissertation and to defend it. His patience and understanding was just remarkable. I could tell you more about Michael, but suffice to say, Professor Sherraden is the epitome of a great mentor. Do not get me wrong, we do disagree and debate sometimes, and we have some serious tensions sometimes. But even in those times, I know that I can trust that everything that he does, he's doing it out of concern for me and to ensure my success. Please help me welcome Professor Michael Sherraden.
Wow, a little hard to talk after that. Thank you very much, Gina. Very, very sweet. It's a great pleasure for me to be here with Gina and Charles and Nick and Temwa. I haven't seen Nick and Temwa since they were little. They don't even remember me. But it's great to see them growing up and becoming strong young men. And I you know, having I, I, I recognized this a few years ago. It was a surprise to me that actually the doc training students is the best thing that we do. And it's a great pleasure to have trained or had she gives me too much credit. Gina, all of you know, will make things happen all by herself. She doesn't need that much guidance or training, but some of us can be there, along that pathway. So it's my honor to have been Gina's professor, and it's really a great pleasure to see this work. As I said, I recognized some time ago that this is like the best thing we do because, and it's a really important part of life in general, but also university life that we do our work and train new people, and they come along and and um, and carry on with work. And actually, my graduate students and the other old professors in the room will also admit this. The graduate students are really smarter than we are, and they accomplish so much more. And so it's just really a total honor to be part of that process, and to be on such a lovely campus representing that process of training people and building knowledge and carrying on. So in that regard, thanks Dean Bowen for your leadership, and also Jack Richmond for great leadership, the previous dean, and still with the school. These are really wonderful leaders in social work education, both, and it's great to see what you're doing here. And Chancellor Folt, I think, had to depart, but it's just I know from other conversations what a great chancellor she is and how much she's doing early in her career. So I think you're all very fortunate to have her here as chancellor, and that feeling is clearly in the room, and that's exciting. It's exciting to me to hear her talk about a public mission for a public university. I work in a private university. We don't have that conversation quite as much, but I think it's really an important part of what universities are about. So with that, I'll try to. I prepared a PowerPoint. It's way more than I will deliver, but I prepared it just in case it was useful for the record. Gina told me I should talk for about 20 minutes, and that's so. Somebody meet. I've got my clock here. I'll try to do that. I don't want to take up the whole evening, but I do have a few things to say. Probably I'll skip a lot of these slides and try to make the points that I think are maybe most provocative here this evening, or try to generalize about why I think this matters and why I think this work matters, and what applied academic work is in the world, and why this center will carry that on. So the first thing, I've started doing this in talks when I'm talking to applied scholars and applied people, where the great thing about having really the privilege to work in the applied social sciences is that we have one foot in the university and we have one foot outside the university. In Gina's case, she's got 2 feet in both places. She's so active as a scholar and as a practitioner, or as a engaged scholar would be the right language. But I just want to make the observation, because I think it needs to be made more often, is that applied scholarship is about testing innovations for positive action. It really is oriented toward trying to figure out what works in the world. And it's not just describing poverty and inequality. And I make this point because it's really the people and the people who are describing poverty and inequality also doing really fine work, and I appreciate that. But it's not the applied social scientists that are getting most of the credit. For some reason, describing difficulties and inequalities is very attractive news, and so that's what we see in the paper almost all the time. You won't see too many front page articles about the work that Gina Cho is doing, trying to improve employability for African teenagers. Even if she, and it's harder work, believe me. Doing applied scholarship in the world is way harder work than trying to figure out how many people are poor and not poor. I mean, it's 100 times harder, and it takes years to do a good project, and you will seldom see that in the front pages of the newspaper. So I just want to acknowledge that, and acknowledge this kind of work for the value that it has, and Maybe we can all get a little better about learning how to communicate that work, but it's a really important point. So I think all of applied scholarship, if it's in public health or social work or other applied fields, really should be held up as exemplary. The academic standards, believe me, are no less than any other kind of scholarship. I mean, we're held to very high academic standards. We're running experiments, research. If I have time today, I'll briefly describe one project that we're doing out of our center. In the Youth Safe project, we ran an experiment in Ghana, and Isaac from the University of Ghana is here. He came all the way over. Great to see him. So it's serious work, it's hard work, and I just want to hold it up and be proud of it, because I think we should be proud of it. Another point I want to make is that the word social, social is a kind of, people think of it as a kind of soft word. In America, actually, it's a kind of suspect word because we're so individualistic. But social is really what humans are about. Humans are a highly social species, and there's really wonderful work in evolutionary biology and anthropology, and increasingly a body of work that's recognizing that it's the sociality of people that has really enabled humans to progress. A lot of times we talk about innovations as being all technological, or maybe technological and economic, but actually there's really growing body of evidence now that it was really sociology, that is people learning to work together, that made other kinds of innovations possible. And I want to hold that up. I want to say it's not, you know, we talk about technology and it's really important, but it's really how people are able to work together that even makes those technological innovations happen. And the technological innovations are also not just technological. Gina and others are working very much in finance and making, you know, finance available to the whole world. If I get time, I'll talk a little bit about that. This is a highly social activity. Almost everything about it is social, from the structure of the finance to the partnerships that make that possible, and the arrangements that make those financial transactions possible. Even though the transaction itself is described as technology, there's so much more involved in that. And I think we need to recognize that and hold that up as well, that it really does matter that we're doing social work and social development, because these are not just nice things that we do. These are things that matter fundamentally. So here's a short list of some examples of massive social innovations in human history. I'm trying to be a little provocative here this evening. So humans, the reason we became such a dominant species, and that's both good and bad. We have a few problems as a species as well, but the reason we became dominant is because we created these social innovations. So we learned how to organize and protect a large community. We learned how to solve problems with groups and with others. Not so well with others. More, we do have a lot of intergroup challenges as humans. There's more work to do here. This is social work that has to be done. Producing and distributing goods, which are thought of as an economic function, is also a very highly social function. Implementing communication and transport, building, keeping, and passing along knowledge. We're at a great university here. The ability of humans to create and assemble and pass knowledge on across generations and across geographies is just made. It made everything else possible in terms of knowledge building, in terms of technological advancement. Implementing codes of conduct and rule of law. These are highly complex social arrangements. Developing arts and shared stories of every kind. Providing protections for health and welfare. And I put these large social innovations on the list here because the other important point is we take almost all of this entirely for granted. And I want to hold this up as humans have created these conditions that enable us to thrive, enable us to succeed. In some ways, maybe succeed a little too much if we don't figure out how to reduce carbon emissions and solve a few other kinds of problems. But it's these social conditions that have mattered. It's social innovations that have mattered, making these things possible. So in terms of Gina's work and our work at the Center for Social Development, we do several kinds of work, but a lot of the work, at least at my center, has been about building assets for low-income households. And Gina has done work in that area and other work in financial services and access. So more broadly, the whole financialization of the world, which is happening very rapidly now. But many people are being left behind. So this is financial transformation, and it's both a technological and, again, a social challenge. Just to give some examples of this, in the Philippines, if you just pay attention to the financial development news for 1 week, the most amazing things will show up. So all of this information I just picked up recently. It's a constant stream of information coming in. It's impossible to absorb it all, really. Things are happening so fast. So in the Philippines, more than 2/3 of the population is unbanked. Even among the banks, so these are the people who actually have financial services, it takes an average of 21 minutes to reach the nearest financial touch point, and it costs an average of US dollars 86 cents US dollars each transaction. Now, there are about 2.5 billion transactions per month in the Philippines, so that's well over $25 billion every year is spent just on the cost of the transport to get to the financial service. Think about these efficiencies. So this is enormously inefficient, and this is not even talking about all the many islands in the Philippines that have no financial services at all. So there's a lot of progress that can be made and is being made really rapidly. There's a different story in the United States and other developed countries, but even in America, a lot of people do not have effective financial services, and I won't go into all these data, but 20% of our population in a very highly economically developed country doesn't have a bank account. And that's really only the beginning of that story. So briefly, is financial inclusion really possible? This is the great social development challenge. Can everybody participate? Can we be social in the sense that everybody's part of this? And I think that, at least for me, that's the kind of guide star of the work that we do. Can you really bring people in? And this starts to become very quickly applied social science. Well, what is the theory? How does that happen? Can you actually implement, even if you think you're pretty clever theoretically, can you actually implement that and make it happen in the world? And do you have evidence for that? So this is the work that we've been doing at the Center for Social Development. It's the work that Gina knows how to do very well and will continue to do at the Global Social Development Innovations here at University of North Carolina. So I could give you an example of this, but I have an example in the PowerPoint. This work that we're doing for children's savings accounts. We're testing the idea of giving every child an account at birth. We have a large experiment running, and it's been running now for 10 or 11 years. I guess we're on the 11th year. The results are very positive. This experiment is a random assignment in a full population in the state of Oklahoma, where there are large populations of people of color, which really matters in this work. So we have large subpopulations that are Black, Latino, and Native American, and we're able to oversample them. So we have actually a beautiful experiment, and started treatment random assignment, treatment and control, good randomization, and started kids' savings with an account at birth, and put $1,000 in it, and then matched some savings for the treatment group. And over time, the results of, and I'll just, instead of going through all these slides, I'll just talk about this a little bit. Over time, the results are quite impressive. The kids in the treatment group, of course, have larger assets, and we're using the college savings plan structure because it's available, it's efficient. One of the things you have to learn in the applied social sciences is, you have to do work that is efficient. You can't do work that's very costly, that only if you put huge resources into something can you make something positive happen. Because if you want to include everybody, then you have to reach everybody with the tools that you have and the resources that are likely to be available. So using efficient structures is just smart. You could probably do more if you hired a staff person to help every child with their homework every night, but we don't have this luxury. So this is the big question in the applied. I try to teach this to my doctoral students. The big question in the applied social science is not can you make something positive happen, but can you make something positive happen that you can put in the world and it will stay there, and the people who implement it are going to be average people working in average organizations, and when they come to work in the morning, they might not be thinking about your project is the most important thing, and they might be getting flu the next week, and all of this, and so on and so on, and this still has to work. So this is the social challenge, and this means to me that you have to think about institutionalizing social innovations. So they don't depend on the good intentions or even the great charisma or the great skill of individuals. And this is a really important idea. It's not an idea that everyone has, but I think it's fundamental if we're going to make a difference at the end of the day. So the issue is with children's savings accounts, can we put this in the world where it will be supported, even if we don't do much, and even if we do some things that are not, they're kind of missteps, or maybe there you get an occasional staff member who's even harmful to the project. Will the thing still last? And so we're running that experiment quite successfully for the last 11, 12 years, and these kids are doing really great. We also had the misfortune of starting this project right before the Great Recession, so we put $1,000 in the account, and 1 year later it was $700, right? But so this is like, this is the applied social science world. But today that account is worth $1,700, and that is a much larger amount of money than certainly the poorest households in the sample ever would have accumulated for their child's education, and it's a much larger sum of money than would be available through any normal bank product because we have investment opportunities through using the college savings plan, and so on and so on. So basically, this project is successful. The data are successful. We've been able to publish, really a wide, long string of articles in very solid academic journals showing not only are these kids financially better off, but they also have better social emotional development at an early age. The mothers have a more positive outlook for their children's education. Their mothers have less depressive symptoms than in the control group. Their parents have a little bit better parenting practices in terms of positive parenting instead of punitive parenting, and so on. So these are all documented, very, very experimentally derived results that make a difference. And I guess what I would like to observe about this too is that we're able to use these results to move this policy idea forward. So now 4 states are opening accounts for every child, and we're working with some other states, and several cities have started similar projects, including my city in St. Louis. This idea also is not just in the U.S., it's also international, so we're working, this idea has carried over, so there are actually Singapore started doing accounts after we got started making, with this policy idea. Singapore was already building assets for adults, but had, now they have a very extensive asset building policy for children. In Korea, we have lots of projects focusing on the bottom half of the population. Israel in January initiated a child development account for all children. Another one of my former doctoral students, Michal Grinstein-Weiss, who was on this faculty, and we were fortunate enough to steal her away back to Washington University. Be careful, we might try to steal Gina back as well. Um, um, McCall had a lot to do with starting the project in Israel. I'm in discussions in Azerbaijan. We have another of my doctoral students, Fred Sewamala, has been doing children's accounts in Uganda and now trying to move that into policy. So this is an idea that that is growing based on, and I want to make the point, based on real science. I mean, that we had to do the hard evidence and get the data to make that possible. And the experience in my career is that having the data is everything. I don't have I hear some people talk about doing academic studies and the results just sit on the shelf. I just don't have this experience. So I think there's something to be said here about the kinds of questions that we're asking and how we're asking them in terms of can we, and I think that's part of, can you move knowledge into the real world? In some sense, if you're actually addressing a real issue and showing that you can improve the world, then I think that's possible. So I think we have work to do in the academy in like what kinds of questions do we ask? Is it the best use of our time? And here, I mean, we can't make prescriptions for each other because the beauty of the academy is that we get to ask what we want, and no one really knows at the end of the day whose question will be right. But I think personally we have to take responsibility for holding ourselves to that kind of standard. Okay, I've gone already, probably my 20 minutes here, and I should be quiet. But just to all of these things are in these slides, so you can look at them in more detail if you want to. But just to go back to a bigger vision, I do think financialization, and using this example, has the potential to become another one of these massive social innovations that I listed before. I think, and certainly there's a lot of public health issues that should be on that massive social innovation list: clean water and sewage, relatively recent creation, which has made so much difference. Increasingly, I view like the development of progress as things moving out of being done solely by individuals and small communities and coming, and I think other people this evening have used the term Gina did, I think, public goods. I think that a lot of the process of humans has been that things move gradually from being privately done or by individuals or by small groups or in the economic market and become public goods. And then we just take them for granted. We don't even recognize it anymore. You know, clean water coming to everybody's house is maybe the best kind of metaphor for this. I think about an account for every child on the planet as being plumbing. And I'm more interested in the plumbing than I am in the amount of cash that flows through those pipes right away, because I think the plumbing is really the key to, can you actually include everyone? And then when you can include everyone, and think about this for a moment, if every child on the planet did have an account, that is, the plumbing was in place, what would happen? Ask yourself, well, what would happen in terms of international aid? What could happen in terms of international philanthropy or social impact investing by corporations? These are interesting questions, and they become possible questions when you think about things becoming truly inclusive and available to everyone. So I'm pretty sure that by the end of this century, the whole world of finance will look, when we just had this discussion with other people this evening, will look entirely different. The information age technology is making this happen so quickly. I just read an article, like also just this week, that someone has created an innovation somewhere where it's like freedom from your national currency. You can buy U.S. dollars on the cloud, even in very small amounts. So you can not have the currency risk that you have if you're in a country that has a shaky currency. Now, I don't want to, but too much faith in the U.S. dollar. Perhaps we could be in that category ourselves someday. But basically, this is a currency choice. This has not been possible in the world, especially for lower income people. And this has huge potential, because if people start moving money out of a local currency, then the people running that country are going to have to think about how they manage their currency. So there are huge effects not only on like what happens to individuals, but what does that create in terms of the way social systems and public policies are initiated. So I'll leave you with those thoughts. I mean, I could go on for a long time, but I think this is and there are a lot of areas besides finance that really matter. But I guess I would like all of us to have the view that things can change a lot. In our own little lifetimes, it's very difficult to see very much social change, but if you just have a little bit longer perspective, you can see a lot of it. And in the social work profession, I led a paper for the Grand Challenges in Social Work called Grand Accomplishments. I really had fun doing that paper with lots of co-authors, really good friends of mine in the profession, sort of enumerating the accomplishments of social work profession over the last 100 years. These are some significant contributions. The world is different because people did this work. So the world will be different because Gina is going to do her work. And Gina has this kind of vision, and she's busy putting these questions on the table, and with many partnerships in the room and elsewhere, gathering that evidence that can make these innovations happen. Thank you all very much.